Hi, folks. My name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. Today, we're going to be talking about life and how we should appreciate life. Now, there's a word that, or I should say, a sentence that he actually mentioned on his Instagram, and he says, "Stop being hard on yourself." That is one of the things that he's mentioned. And those are the vocabularies that we'll be talking about. And there's one word that he usually says on his website, Manifesto. So those are the words that we'll be talking about. And what is this whole episode about? Well, why don't you get into the episode? Why don't you listen to Troy? Troy is an amazing person. Just met him like a few minutes before the recording. But I had a sense that he was an awesome guy. So why don't we just bring him on? Let's chit chat and talk about life and the manifesto of life. How about that? So Troy, how are you? Thanks for coming on Back to Basics.
It's great to be here, Girish. I'm honored to be on your podcast. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into the life and the hardships of life and manifesto of life, what does back to basic mean to you?
Back to basic just means to slow down and simplify life and to really get back to my true nature and who I am and how I was created. And somehow, not somehow, we get lost in that. We forget who we are, and we forget we're here to enjoy life and live a life of passion and being fulfilled. Now, that doesn't mean there's not challenging things in our life, but looking at each challenging thing as a way to grow spiritually and to become a better person. So, back to basics is just slowing down and appreciating just being here, having a good conversation. That is back to basics.
Yeah, thank you so much, Troy, for answering that question, and thank you again for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
You know, lift your spirit, take a
Yeah.
chance on yourself. That is what you say on your website.
Yep.
So it's about spirit warriors. So can you
Mhm.
explain where did the sentence came from, and what is this whole synopsis of this spirit warrior, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so working with my coach, I've been working with a coach. I'm a coach and I work with a coach for the last 5 years, and just kind of coming up with, what do I stand for? And this was like beginning of my journey, this deep introspective journey, which that's what I consider a spiritual warrior, is anybody who's willing to go on a deep introspective journey for a transcendent cause greater than ourselves. And when my coach said, "Hey, you're a spiritual warrior," I'm like, "No, I'm not." I don't even know what that means. But as I understand and I go on this introspective journey, which I've been on now deeply, I guess probably for the last 5 years, but even more immersed in it in the last probably 2 or 3 years, it's just doing the deep inner work, and that's a spiritual warrior. It's looking in the mirror and looking at the things that we don't really like about ourselves and the things that are good, the strengths as well. But it's a lot of people aren't willing to do that because it's not fun. And trust me, I've wanted to quit a number of times. Working with my coach, doing this work, just going back to just kind of Troy that really, wasn't willing to take a really hard look at myself. So I found in this process is really starting to take chances on myself and getting caught up in safety and security and the known from, I was in pharmaceutical industry for 17 years. I knew I was going to get a paycheck, but yet I was so unfulfilled and my spirit was not lifted. It was actually the opposite. I was in quiet desperation. And I finally took a chance on myself. I quit the pharmaceutical industry after 17 years and started this journey of being an entrepreneur and this self-discovery. So that's really in a nutshell kind of the journey that I've been on in the last several years. And that's what a spiritual warrior is. And it's a challenging journey and not one that many are willing to go on.
Yeah, thank you, Troy, for answering that question. But I think I
Sure.
might know the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Uh,
Ask away.
was this more of a inner Troy finding or a outside Troy finding?
This is all about inner Troy finding. This is all about self discovery. And like I said, life has a way of, say, beating us up and we get lost in who we are. I went through a pretty challenging divorce. Gosh, it's been about coming up on 12 years now. And I had no idea who I was as a man. And I think that's the journey that I've been on over the last few years. In fact, as I look back, all these things that I thought I was, were all just things that I got caught up in, and these labels. And that's one thing I'm really working on in my life, is to get rid of labels, right? I'm a football player. I'm a golfer. I'm even, attaching to religion, all these things, instead of just I am, and learning to love who I am as just a spiritual being, and not having to attach or prove or perform, or even coming on this podcast. It's just like, my only goal is to show up as best I can as me. I don't have to prove myself. You don't have to like me. Your audience doesn't have to like me. And there's freedom in that. And I've never felt that way before. I've always had to feel like I had to present a certain way. Now, that doesn't mean I don't try to make my hair look good, or I don't take care of myself, but it doesn't really define who I am. And that's the journey that I've been on. And it's a work in progress for sure, but it's the freedom that comes with that, and the inner peace and the joy. It's something that I want everybody to be able to experience, but you got to go through the inner work, the inner Troy, to get to that, so to speak.
Yeah. So thank you again, Troy, for
Yeah,
answering that question.
absolutely.
Let me ask you this here. You don't have to answer this question, but I'm
Hmm.
asking this to understand, to explain to the other folks and who's
Sure.
listening and who's viewing this podcast.
Hmm.
Um, do you think this corporate life that you were in
Hmm.
and the marriage life that you were in, do you think that you were in a cage and not able to find yourself within that? Do you think
Yeah,
there were boundaries? Is that
yeah,
what?
for sure. I mean, I call it being trapped, and I put myself in that trap, and partly because I didn't know. I didn't really know any different. I call that ignorance. But as my wisdom, my inner wisdom, I gained that inner wisdom. I look back and look at the choices that I made, and a lot of it was because of the way I was brought up. Not to blame anybody, but that's the work that I've been able to work through. And yeah, I think most people put themselves in their own cage. And I think this journey is about going through that healing. And who doesn't have some level of trauma in their childhood or growing up and have things happen? And that's why we make poor choices, and a lot of it is very subconscious. And that's why, and the most important thing that we can do for ourselves is to heal ourselves, so we can start to heal other people. But really, it starts with us. And Gandhi said it best: be the change that you want to see in the world. And without doing our inner work and letting ourselves, we got the key to the cage. We just got to take the key and reach around it and unlock it,
That
and
is
then start to live the life, right, that we were created to live. And that's joy, peace, love, happiness. And that's getting back to the basics, right? That's how we were created. But yet life happens to us.
But Troy, I mean, this is from Troy's point of view. So now let me just switch the table.
Hmm.
What do you think that employers should do to make sure that people like you and everyone around us doesn't go through that cage path that you went to? What
Yeah,
do you,
well,
what do you
I
think?
think, as somebody who employs another person, is allow them to be themselves. Number one is really important. I was in the pharmaceutical industry. It really wasn't in my nature, but if I could operate within my nature, which, I don't want to describe myself as a lone wolf, but allowing me to do things my way. And I don't like having somebody hovering over me while I'm doing my work. I would probably do it better now. But if just, okay, this is your territory, go run it the way you do. If you have any questions, I'll be there for you. Right. That would have allowed me just to, as an introvert, do my own thing. But, I'm very self motivated. So I would say the number one thing is get to know your employee and allow them to be themselves, obviously within the parameter of, your company. But if you're trying to get somebody to be somebody they're not, I call it trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And that's kind of been the story of my life until I've learned who I am and accepted myself for who I am. It's okay to be a square peg. You know, I don't have to fit in the round hole. And quite honestly, if everybody's fitting into the round hole, there's not going to be any creativity. There's not going to be any expression of who we truly are. And we're just going to be a lot of yes, ma'am, yes, sirs. And that doesn't create this beautiful life of diversity and freedom. I think that we're called to live.
Yeah. Troy, thank you again for explaining that, and
Yeah,
hopefully whoever is the employer can listen to this, and hopefully there'll be a change for other uh,
yeah.
future Troys out there to help
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah,
out
I think that's really important. And I think overall my companies did pretty good with that, but I think I could probably even do better myself explaining, and I didn't really know at the time. And again,
there.
it's just understanding myself better than I ever have,
Yeah.
and getting out of my own way so I can communicate and verbalize, hey, if you want me to be my best, this is actually what I really need. So it's that also expressing ourselves and this is what I need and this is I want to be my best. But right now, I feel like
Right.
there's a lot of just hovering or trying to control how I do my job.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone, whoever's listening, the employers, that it's not always your fault. Okay,
Yeah,
it has to be also the employee. But the thing is that you guys also have to listen to
yeah,
the employees to make yourself successful. We're
right.
not saying that employers are always in fault. Troy is just explaining from his point of
Yeah.
view that he just went through. So,
Hmm.
Troy, thank you for explaining that.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So now we've dissected Troy. So now let me ask you this here. When people they come to you for help and advice,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
we know what are the reasons are, that you're not finding your inner self,
Right.
they're kind of depressed and all the other
Hmm.
stuff, right? And if there's other things which I've missed, please let me know. But what are your first three steps that do you go through to coaching these
Mm.
folks here?
Yeah, I think everybody's different. And as you said, everybody comes to me with different challenges. And a lot of it is, yeah, just feeling trapped, as I mentioned. There's something missing in their life. And, the first thing is to go inward and do the healing work, whether it's coaching with me or through therapy and just getting this sense of freedom back and starting to dream again. So it first turns inward and listening to that voice within instead of looking outside of ourselves. And I think most of my work is with men, so I typically gear my message towards men. And uh, kind of so many men are just stuck in jobs that they don't like and caught up in money, right? Money is the great defining factor of
Mm,
success, it seems, in this world, and power. So the first step is start to get that inner power back because it's in here. It's inside of us. And
mm,
if we're looking outside of us, which I did for many years, whether it was through athletics or relationships, or wasn't ever really about money, but it was more about defining myself externally by what people said about me and my athleticism and body image, all those things. So as that kind of dissolves, it's just like, oh, I actually like myself. I'm actually a
right.
really good person. So that first step is that inner wisdom and really tapping into that inner power would be I guess the first step. I've never really thought of it in steps. I just kind of
Yeah,
go with
just do
what
it with
comes.
the
But
flow.
then it's like, okay, all right, let's start dreaming again. Like
Right.
what is going to make you happy? And it's so fun for me to see men come alive in front of me, right? A
But
lot of men
Troy,
are just stuck in this. Maybe it's an hourly job, or even they're great at something. I work with one of the top fishery biologists, I think, in the world. And he's just
mm,
like, it's not doing it for him anymore. He loves to teach. So it's like, all right, what do you need to do? So he's
yeah,
going back to school to be a teacher. And I got another guy that's, he was working an hourly job and just doing this kind of factory work. And now he's transforming these homes and creating homes for people, and he's happy and fulfilled. So it's finding this dream and this level of fulfillment again. And then it's It's creating balance would be, I guess the third thing is how do you create balance in your life? Whether you're
Mm.
with your family, with your health, with your spiritual life. It's easy to get so consumed with one area and then all these other areas are kind of going wheels off. And
Right.
how do we create this balance in life? I love your theme of back to basics, right? Because we've lost sight of that in
Mm.
our world.
That's
What's most important in our world? And I think if every person asks themselves this question, I'm a big believer in inquiry and contemplation. What does it mean to get back to basics in my life? What
mm,
does it mean to be fulfilled in my life? What does it mean to be balanced? What does it mean to show up for my family, but also do the work that I'm called to do and take care of my health? And
right.
what do I need to eliminate that isn't helping me along the journey? And it's a battle. And that's why having a coach is so critical because we can't do it alone. We just cannot, and we're not meant to. So that
Yeah.
would be my three steps in a more verbose way of saying it.
But Troy, thank you again for
Yeah.
explaining. It's kind of surprising that it's only men that it's approaching you. Is it because men are not vocal enough to express themselves, and that's why they get into this rut
Yeah.
circle, and they don't know how to channelize their anger, I guess, or their frustration, or
Yeah.
whatever? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm called to work with men, and if a woman said, "Hey, I want to work with you," I'd be okay.
Sure,
That's
sure.
totally cool.
Yeah.
I think it's the pride mentality. Like,
Mm,
I got this. I don't need any help.
right.
Is really what comes up time and time again. And sharing a story with this guy that I've been working with. Probably coming on close to 5 years now, and we worked together for 3 years. And COVID hit, and some things, so we took a little break.
Mm,
And then we started to work together again. And he just, what he said is, I recognize I
mm,
cannot do this on my own. And
mm,
I needed this time, to do it on
mm,
my own, to recognize I can't do it on my own. And since,
right.
I say this with all humility, that since we're working together again, his life is already transforming, moving in a direction. And we're just made that way, that we need somebody to encourage us, to support us, to hold up a mirror to the blind spots that we don't see or we don't want to see.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've worked with my coach for 5 years, and many a times I've wanted to quit, but I recognize that I'm working with her to speak the truth that I don't really want to see or I
Mm,
don't really know. So I think it's pride, specifically for men, that they can we can figure it out on our own. And if something's not working in your life, which pretty much that's every person,
sure.
there's very few people that everything is running on all cylinders. Your story might be different, Girish, but uh, there's very few people where every area of their life is just they're knocking out of the park.
Of
So
course. Of
we
course.
all have blocks and we all have resistance, and
That's right. That's right.
it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to have somebody to encourage, and that's one of my strengths. I love to encourage people, but also ask the difficult questions because we have the answers within ourselves,
Mm.
and that's really what I do, is help them find the answers within themselves.
Oh, Troy, thank you again. And
Yeah,
then one last question, if you don't mind.
sure.
You do you call yourself a magician?
Do I call myself? I do not. I've never thought
The
of
reason
myself
the
as a
reason why I
magician.
say that is
Okay.
because on your website you say manifesto. So it just sounds like that you're a magician. So where did this word come from for you, and why
Yeah.
is it so important for that?
Yeah. So manifesto, that was encouraged by my coach. Like, kind of what do I stand for, and what is the work that what I am personally doing,
Mm,
right? So it's actually based on the archetypes. So Carl Jung's archetypes,
mm,
and the different archetypes. So my number one archetype is the sage.
right.
I love to learn, and that's good. And the part of what's come up with that is I'm always reading other people's stuff and not trusting my own inner wisdom. And
Right.
yeah, so that's where like the first sentence of my manifesto is to start to trust my own inner wisdom as the independent thinker
Mm,
versus groupthink.
mm,
Okay, I'm just going to attach to this, think what everybody else is, instead of like, well, is that my truth?
mm,
So, kind of going through these different stages of the archetypes that have been created through this manifesto.
mm,
And so just putting that out there to for other people to see, well, this is the work that I'm doing. And then you can see like, so that's the first archetype. And then the last one is caregiver.
mm,
So how can I continue to do this work of healing and becoming who I am to ultimately be the ultimate caregiver,
mm,
to be selfless, to really serve. And but if I don't do the things to take care of myself,
mm.
I will continue to be this selfish human being that is only concerned about me and
Sure,
I.
sure.
And those are the steps that I go through, I would say, on a daily basis, and
Mm,
some more than others. And
mm,
sometimes, things are just showed up glaringly in my life that, okay, this is an area that I really need to focus on.
mm,
And ultimately, yeah, it's for a transcendent cause greater than myself. And
mm.
I'm still really, that's it's discovery. It gets more
Sure.
revealed to me every day. And it's like, I've kind of landed on, I'm an inner transformation coach.
Mm,
After being a personal trainer and working on outer transformation, I recognize without the inner transformation, the outer transformation is either shallow or it's not sustainable. So
mm, mm.
that's part of the journey that I've been on, and it's actually fun.
Yeah, I'm proud.
We forget that we get to have fun in this lifetime, right? It's
Yeah,
like
that's true.
I've been, described as intense and serious, which I have been, but I'm learning, just lighten up a little bit, have
Sure.
fun and joke, smile, and don't take myself too seriously.
Sure, sure. Troy, thank you again for coming on the show and
Yeah,
explaining all the inner and the outward Troy and what
yeah,
he went through. And I want to help other people with this story. And thank you again for coming here. But
yeah.
before you leave today, Troy, do you have any last words for all my listeners and my viewers? And how was your journey on Back to Basics for you?
Yeah, well, it actually flew by. It's I always, I get a little bit nervous before these, and I played football in college, and I always equated to, taking that first hit. You're nervous until you kind of get that first hit in. It's like you're kind of nervous until you get that first question, and then
Yeah.
you just free flow it. So how it feels to be on Back to Basics, it's fun. Just to share. One thing I said, the best thing about I have a podcast is it's just you get to meet people that are passionate about what they do, and when you have a good interviewer that just asks good questions, it's just super easy. So I'll leave your listeners with one thing that something that I've worked on in my life, and it's a quote from Dallas Willard. He's a pastor. It's ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. If you can slow down and appreciate just the little things in life, whether it's a
Mm,
conversation with a loved one,
mm,
or it's a just a delicious cup of black coffee that is strong and powerful and makes, just kind of gives you goosebumps because it's so strong, or it's just a hug from one of your kids, or your dog just coming up to you and just giving you unconditional love. We It's easy to look for all these amazing things outside of us, and going on a vacation is wonderful, but let's just slow down and ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life and
mm,
appreciate the small things in life, because we don't know when this last day on earth is going to be. So soak it in, appreciate it, even some of the things that maybe have been annoying to you in the past,
mm.
or to me in the past. It's okay. It's okay. It's just part of life. So that would be probably one thing that I would encourage everybody to do in their own way.
Yeah, Troy, thank you again for coming on the show, and thank you again for those kind words, and
Yeah.
thank you for. Hopefully, you'll come back with your other journey and your
Yeah.
eventual
Yeah.
back to basics. So thank you
Yeah.
again, Troy, for
You
coming on.
bet. Yeah. It's my pleasure to be on here, and the journey continues.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So, guys, we spoke with Troy today and we talked about the basics of life, Manifesto, and what he has gone through and all the sufferings that he's gone through. But I wouldn't call that suffering because it was a time period that he had a short period of suffering there. But then he's happy. He's really, really happy. And it's Manifesto life, according to him. So as usual, as always, there is a quote of the day, and hopefully Troy will like the quote. The quote is, fight your battles through prayers and win your battles through faith. And that's what we all do, right? We look for faith, and that's what we need to look for. As usual, as always, what do we always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and keep on subscribing to all my episodes, and rate and review all my shows, because I try to get all the inputs from you guys by learning by you. And the three things, including this episode and every episode of mine, becomes a hit for me, that is, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care, God bless, and I will see you next time on Back to Basics. Take care, God bless. Next week's episode on Back to Basics. COVID as a situation, but I rather think in a different way, out of the box. Do you think that we're listening more versus not listening as what we used to back in the days? What are your thoughts on that?
Listening? Is that what you said? Yeah. Listening what? To each other, to ourselves, to the world around us?
You know what I've noticed is that now that people are getting into the podcast world and they're getting into the radio world, they're getting into the listening mode, right? And it seems like they're listening a lot and learning a lot versus